puisi. Kita ko katsista pitsini kohpua. Isto danikko Nunaakin tsinaksupukaidikaasim. My Indian name is Nunaaki. That's my childhood name. Okidetsin se miksi kanatsumidaksi tsinaki tsinikakkikaaki. When I joined the Brave Dog Society, my cousin Rosie Red Crows, better known as Chinaki, gave me the name Ikaki. Skinny woman, I never was skinny, but I readily accepted the name because she raised my dad, who was orphaned. Him and his sister were orphaned when they were young kids. They grew up in a Catholic vocational ed school. So Leroy talked about identity. And so I didn't know what I was going to say when I got up here, but as I was listening, things were popping into my mind. I will tell you the story of my identity. I was raised in a nice, warm, cozy home, 2-bedroom, secure, never had a worry. My older brothers and sisters were in the boarding school, and I never realized that I would be the next one. It never occurred to me. One day we went to get my sister at the boarding school. A matron had shoved her down a flight of stairs. So my mom and dad were really upset. By the way, if I mispronounce a word, that's okay, because that's the way I hear the words. I can't hear out of my right ear. So don't mind me. You understand what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so we went to the boarding school in a snow sled, I remember. And of course, when we got to the boarding school, I took off downstairs and I was playing with the kids. And kids sense when it's time to go. I thought, after I got to playing, after about half hour, I wasn't sure at the time, that it was time to go home. So I ran upstairs where my folks were visiting with a priest or minister. I looked in the room, they were gone. I couldn't find them. I was frantic. I ran up and down the hallway crying, looking for my mom and dad. Then pretty soon that same matron that pushed my sister down a flight of stairs come after me. And her and some of my relatives grabbed me, and they dragged me downstairs. And I was screaming, crying, kicking, and that's the first day I learned how to fight, because I was fighting them for my life. They gave me a glass of water to settle me down, and I was drinking the water. They were kind of forcing me. That's the day I lost my identity, because they chopped my hair. I had beautiful long hair. They chopped it up to my ears, and my ears would stick out, so they taped my ears down, and I didn't speak but a few words of English, so I was always in the corner. I was always getting punished for speaking my language. And that's why I have a difficult time saying and speaking totally in our Blackfeet. But anyway, I stayed in a boarding school for 6 years. Then I went to an old white school. And there we weren't accepted either because we were Indians. And in a boarding school we were supposed to be changed into white people. So we thought we'd fit in this white community, all white community. It didn't work out that way. So as I went through life, I didn't know who I was. I kind of felt like I just blew around, not landing, my feet not landing solid any place. When Pete Standing alone them was making the Circle of the Sun, I was out there at the Sundance with the rest of the girls that I hung around with. And I wanted to be a part of that. And I was excluded, and I couldn't figure out why I was excluded. He picked my sister Marie, and later on in life, I understood. She looked more Indian than I did. I didn't look Indian. And so, who am I? Where am I from? The identity crisis was there. I just didn't know who I was. So I got married and I raised a lot of kids. I'll get back to that later. But my daughter was in the middle school. She come home one day, and this is when they were starting to revive our culture. It was starting to be good to be Indian again. Before then, it was not cool to be Indian. So anyway, she come home one day and she was extremely upset with me. She said, I'm moving this fool. Anyway, she said, why can't we live like Indians? I said, well, how do the Indians live? This is the only way I know how to live. This is the way I was raised. This is the way my families live. This is the way they wanted me to live. I was so acculturated that I didn't realize it. I looked around my home and walls. There was nothing to depict my heritage. And that was the day my life changed. And I decided, okay, I'm going to find myself. I'm going to find out who I am. And at that time, they say Blackfeet women don't go to sweats. But at that time, there was a few people that did allow women into the sweats. One of them was Buster Yellow Kidney. So I went out to Buster's place and I visited with him and I said, I need help, Buster. My life seems to be going all down the wrong way, the wrong path. I need to get back on the right path, but I need help. I need somebody to help me. And I'm looking to you for help. He said, okay, I'll help you. So I'd start going to the sweats, and the sweats, you go in there and you pray. It's intense praying. You're praying for cleansing your body, mind, and soul. And it does cleanse you. It's tough. Being in a sweat is not easy. There's times I thought I was going to die in there. But that was the beginning and the changing of my life. And Buster used to keep me on the straight and narrow. And I have to tell you a funny story. We went on a picnic one weekend and there was drinking there. So I stood around with the rest of them and I had a can of beer and I was sipping on it and forgot about going to a sweat the next morning, and you're not supposed to be indulging in stuff like that. So I woke up the next morning and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be in trouble. So I got in a vehicle, drove out to his house, and he had fire going. And I said, Buster, I did something bad last night. He said, what did you do? I said, I drank. Last night I was drinking beer at a picnic and I forgot I was going to come to this sweat. Just about then all the logs fell in and he said, see what you did? I just got scared. But he was always pulling stuff like that on me. He said, well, I'll tell you how. We'll have to cleanse you before you go into the sweat. But you know, it was the beginning. It was the cleansing of my life. I felt like I was going to start on the right path. And I had lost my mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, 3 of them in a row, just about months apart, 1 month, 1 week. And it was devastating. It was hard on me. And I didn't want to go to drinking like most people do. I wanted to just, you know, live the good life. But it wasn't easy because I was so lost. I was lost in all this acculturation. And to find myself was really difficult. But I went to, I eventually went in my mid-40s, went back to college. After my kids all grew up and graduated from high school or went on their own, I decided to go to college and I was deathly afraid. I got picked as, to join the Montana Indian Teacher Training Program. And I was so scared that when I was in high school, I was told I wasn't college material to go voc ed. I wasn't smart enough, and I believed it. I even act dumb. I played the role of a dummy too. And so to be picked to go to this college was extremely scary. So my husband come with me, and my husband was my biggest supporter. He'd always say, I know you can do it, Laura. You can do it. He had a lot of faith in me. And that pulled me through. The first time I got an A, I ran home and I said, look, Bob, I got an A. I got an A in my test. He said, I knew you could do it. So that he kept me and supported me tremendously in my endeavor to become an educator. And you know, I never thought I'd be an educator because of my introduction into education. I hated the boarding school. I hated education. I hated being in a classroom. It was not a natural setting for me. And I know it's touching some people that have attended boarding schools too, and it's a very emotional thing. You can't help but get emotional when you think back about the boarding schools. But we have to be strong, and our women are strong. And I became one of the strong women that the boarding schools produced. Anyway, as an educator, I went into different fields. I wore many hats. I was the bilingual director, the late Joyce Goodstriker, who is my relative, close relative, first or second cousin, talked me into applying for this position. And she'd always say, I said, don't hold back. She said, I know you can do it, Laura, because I was always lacking self-confidence. But she talked me into applying for this position, and that's the beginning of introducing our culture, our language, and everything into our school curriculum. And it was a difficult job because I felt like the cart was rolling with me and I was hanging on and it was pulling me. And I was kind of like the sole driver. Nobody else was in the cart with me in the school district. And I got caught right in the middle of the people that were for it and those that were against it. And because I even got accused of teaching religion in the school system. And so anyway, I felt like they were trying to crucify me. And so that was the beginning. It was a tough challenge. It was an extreme challenge for a lady or a woman educator to take on that field. And the superintendent of schools just kept saying, Laura, I know you can do it. I know you can do it. But they didn't support the idea. There was money available, and that's what they wanted to do, was bring money into the district. So I was the Lone Ranger. I rode alone. And so when all this controversy exploded in our community, there was a pro and there was the people that were against it. I felt like I was right in the middle, that they were just going to do me in. And it was a scary incident. But we got through it all, and eventually things started falling into place. It was all right to be an Indian. It was all right to be an educator. And it was all right to be a woman, a lady, and be a leader, which historically our children didn't realize the women are the leaders of many of our clans. My grandmother, my matriarch grandmother, she was the leader of our clan. And in my family, my mother was, so it was handed down for generations. But I just never realized it as a child. I had a lot of feelings of anger towards my parents because they left me in a boarding school. And little did I know that they didn't have no choice. She never talked about it. She never explained anything. And so I went around my childhood being an angry person. And I did stupid things. And it seemed like I did it to myself, like I didn't like myself. So I had to learn to like myself first before I could help anybody, before I could help any children, even my own children. And that's a tough thing to do, is to learn to love and like yourself. So I was a middle school principal. I worked at Red Crow Community College. I came home and worked there, and I got totally involved with the elders in our culture and our religion and so forth. And it was like a sabbatical to me. I finally started learning about our culture, our dances, our religious ceremonies. And it was something that it was just so fabulous for me. I just ate up all I could and take things internally. And I worked at Red Crow Community College for 4.5 years. My husband got sick, who had been in the state legislature and had to come home. He had to have emergency surgery. So I resigned and I moved back home to take care of him. And so there, I was without a job, but I wasn't worried. The school superintendent called me and she said, I have a position I would like you to take if it's possible. I said, what is that? He said, the assistant principal for the Browning Middle School. And like a crazy fool, I said, okay, Never thought a second about it. I got into the school and it was one of the toughest schools I'd ever worked in. In fact, I was told later it was the toughest school in the state of Montana. And why? Because they had students in there that in their early educational years were in kindergarten, kindergarten and a half, first grade, and first grade and a half. By the time they got to the middle school, they were grown up men and women. And some of the incidents that we had, I was really afraid. I was afraid for myself and I was afraid for the kids. We had a place in by the cafeteria that the students came down from the second floor and they all congregated right by the cafeteria we called Malfunction Junction. Many of the fights broke out there. And some of them were really dangerous fights, and the staff was always getting in the middle to try and stop it, and some of them got hurt. The second week I was there, I thought, oh my God, how did I get this? How did I get myself into this situation? What shall I do? But I stayed with it, I hung in there. I worked full-time as the assistant principal, and I had to pick up 14 credits to be certified as a principal. And in that middle school year, the next year, I became the principal. But the 2 years I spent there was the most educational years that I ever had. I got to learn about our children. I got to learn about the kids that came to school that had survival was the name of the game. That's all they came to school for, is to have something to eat, to be warm, and to be safe. Because there was about 30 or 35 students that were in this situation. Not all of the students were in this predicament, but our academically inclined students survived and thrived on their own. But these 30, 35 kids were the ones that took up all our time. But they taught me what life was about. I had a little boy come in and he said, "Can I use the staff bathroom?" And I said, "Why? You have restrooms over there." He said, "I'm scared to go in there and use it. The older kids do things to us." And I wasn't aware of that. And then another kid come in, he said, "Can I leave school early?" And I said, "Why? Why do you want to leave school?" "Because I have to run home fast and get home before the other kids get up, because these gang members will grab me and beat me up. If they want you to join them, they'll beat you up. And they'll put you through some tests that are not very good." So, you know, these things I wasn't even aware of. I lived in my own little life, in my own little home, my little own secure world. I didn't realize how tough it was for some kids. But that was the learning experience of a middle school leader, educational leader. Recently I had a kid I worked with at well, he was one of my middle school students. I still call him a kid, but he's one of the staff members at Blackfeet Community College. He come and asked me if I would help him work on his dissertation. I thought, wow, that's quite an honor. He said, "I never gave it a second thought. I picked you, Laura, because I knew you could tell me so many things, so many stories about your educational leadership." And so we went from school to school to school and pulled out all the memories I had in my head to help him out, help him write his dissertation on educational leadership. But I wanted to give some of our previous educational leaders, Native American leaders, some credit. Tom Thompson, Stan